Okay, it looks like we are live here. I'm with Shawn Burkett, who is a filmmaker, and we're going to talk with him about a number of things. If you guys have been following the YouTube channel, I reviewed his movie Animal Inside. We're going to talk about that quite a bit, but we're going to talk about plenty of stuff. And so, welcome, Shawn.
Thank you.
Now,
Be
go ahead.
here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. So before we get into the main interview, could you sort of introduce yourself to the viewers and just kind of run down some of the things you've done, what you got going, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I'm Shawn Burkett. I'm a independent filmmaker from Brookville, Ohio, which is a suburb of Dayton. I've always been into horror movies, and it took me way too long before I got into actually making them, to where I've done everything under the sun. I was a tattoo artist. I was a touring musician. I worked in machine shops, went to college, dropped out, all this craziness. And yeah, making movies is what has stuck the best. And I feel like I'm well known for the film Don't Fuck in the Woods.
Right, which you've just done a sequel, which we'll talk about that too. A couple of things that I want to get started with. So just some questions I tend to ask everybody. First off, do you remember when you first got interested in spooky or horror stuff, and what sort of prompted that?
Oh yeah, I would have to say it was when my grandfather watched me like every day while my parents were at work, and he would take me to the local video store, and he'd always let me pick out movies. But one time he just picked out The Wolfman, and he was like, "This is something I think you're old enough to see." And he rented it. We watched it. I loved it. We went through all the Universal monster movies, and then eventually he just let me run rampant in horror. So, but yeah, that's where it started, was with the Wolfman.
Nice. That's a great place to start. Actually, I love all those old Universals. Now, do you have is film your favorite medium, or do you also read a lot of horror books? And do you have maybe comic books, that kind of stuff? You have a favorite medium?
I feel like film is my favorite, but I feel like graphic novels get it right more often. Even comic books. Man, before I made Animal Inside, I was a super huge fan of Werewolf by Night.
Oh, I love that comic book.
And the Tomb of Dracula, and I was more into those versus like Tales from the Crypt, or I know DC had a version of that. I can't remember.
House of Mystery, maybe?
Yeah, House of Mystery was one, yeah.
I think that was DC.
Those were cool, but it just felt like the Marvel comics were a little more put together. Wasn't necessarily, they didn't have to be anthologies. So.
Right. Yeah, I was always a big Marvel guy myself. Now, who would you consider some of your favorite horror creators?
As far as just film?
If film, books, comics, whatever you think are your favorites.
Unexpected. That was DC's.
Yeah. I remember that one now.
I've got a pile of comics that I've just recently gotten here, like the Frankenstein monster from Marvel, with the introduction of Dracula from Tomb of Dracula.
Oh, nice.
Random that I just have those here.
I was like, wow, you got a whole collection of comic books there, huh?
Yeah, well, and that ain't even me opening one of my boxes. So yeah, I'm sorry. What was that question again?
Some of your favorite horror creators.
Um, it is all over. It is. I mean, I'm obviously John Carpenter, Ty West. Um, except I'm I'm not gonna lie. I like Ty West more House of the Devil era. Um, I really think for me though, like Hitchcock is where I learned a lot because I also feel like Hitchcock is where these people learned a lot. So it's like um, I'm a huge admirer of Alfred Hitchcock, but obviously Wes Craven and yeah, John Carpenter, Ty West. There's so many, um, but I feel like it all starts with Hitchcock.
Yeah, I think a lot of the greats sort of learned at least their pacing and stuff from Hitchcock. Is one of my favorite quotes from Hitchcock is something like, there's no terror in the bang. The terror is in the anticipation of it. And I think a lot of times, a lot of the modern films sort of miss that, and they're just in your face right from the beginning. And I think you've got to have that build up and that anticipation to have that feeling of dread. And I think a lot of them miss that.
Right. I actually the opening of Don't Fuck in the Woods, I quote that.
Oh, nice.
So yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's really important. That's why, I've got a little publishing imprint called that I do science fiction and horror. And it's the science fiction, it's Tales of Wonder and Dread, and the wonder is the science fiction. But dread to me is really what horror is about. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily the in your face stuff, it's the dread. And that's the whole, anticipation of the boom or the bang. So I think that's the whole basis of horror, really. Um, Now, do you have any favorite horror books, or well, we sort of talked about the comic books? Do you have any specific horror books that are your favorites?
Um, I'm a big fan of, and at this part, it's like it's not necessarily horror, but like, I always loved the Portrait of Dorian Gray. Um, I I'm iffy about like the Frankenstein novelizations, uh, but at the same point in time, I loved High Hopes about the Amityville. So
Oh,
it's
I don't
like
think I've read that.
um, for me, horror books. I feel like a lot of my books are mainly more based off real life things, like the High Hopes about the Amityville stuff, and then I know I have too many books on serial killers. Uh, yeah, I don't have a lot of fictional horror books actually.
Okay, well, now what about favorite horror movies?
That's like a loaded question. Oh, so many, so many. I can tell you the film that made me really be like, okay, I've seen this now. I really want to try to make a movie.
Okay.
Um, wasn't really even a horror film. It was Hard Candy,
Hmm.
and just the way that they sold it, it had a very Hitchcock vibe. I mean, if you haven't seen it, there's a scene where this girl is this girl has this man like bound, and she believes that he is a murderer who um, raped and murdered her friend. Now this girl may be 16, and she has him bound, and you don't see anything, but she is convincing this man that she is going to castrate him. and you're like on the edge of your seat the whole time. And then in the end, after that, you find out that she just numbed him,
Oh,
and the pressure made him feel like something was happening. It was just between the acting, and that movie has a very, it's minimal. It has Elliot Page and, oh man, his name was just there. Patrick Wilson, who's in the Conjuring movies.
right.
It's a good film.
Nice. Let me see here. So now, we can't live just strictly by spooky stuff. So, what kind of other things are you interested in, just in general?
um, I don't know. I've been living the spooky stuff for a while now, which is funny because, like, for me, man, Halloween isn't the same anymore. Like, I became a full-time filmmaker a few years ago, and it's like I'm living in horror every day to where, like, Halloween just, luckily I have kids to where it's like, okay, at least I need to do something for the kids.
Right.
But it doesn't have that, like, it's Halloween time, like, build up anymore.
I think for me, the way I look at it, because one of my things that I use in the videos for Spooky Ventures a lot is I say that spooky is a way of life, not really a season. But what I do like about the Halloween season is that the rest of the world's kind of on the same place we're at, and
Yeah.
so you see it everywhere that time of year, which is kind of cool. And it's, I guess, a little more acceptable. Although I'll wear my spooky stuff out year round, but so let's see here. Now, you created any stuff that's outside of horror? Or is it all just horror that you've done?
Yeah, thus far, like, I've done a few music videos, but yeah, generally, um, my features and my shorts have been horror.
Okay, nothing wrong with that. um, Now, here's kind of an odd question, and this is the last of our sort of general questions that I ask everyone. Um, if you could sit down to dinner with any three people, either living or dead, who would you be sitting down with, and what would be on the menu?
I'm gonna go with. I've got two of them right off the bat. As you were asking the question, I had two. I'm trying to think of who the third would be. Um, who's my third? Yeah. Okay, so Alfred Hitchcock, Orson Welles, and Lon Chaney Jr.
Oh, nice.
And um, rare ribeyes served with asparagus and red potatoes.
That sounds delicious.
I haven't thought about that before.
What's that?
I haven't thought about any of that before.
Well, it worked. Okay, so now, getting on to Animal Inside. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that was originally released as Betsy.
Yeah.
And so, when did the name change come? Was that strictly for the video release, or how did that come about?
So, wow, I don't. Let's see. We wrapped making that film in June of 2017. And we released it, and then we started getting into widespread distribution. And we signed with a company to distribute it, and they started the process. They got it on streaming services, and then never put it out physically. we ended up having issues with them because they weren't, being upfront with us. They weren't sending us reports. They weren't telling us if anything was selling. And the way that they kind of acted was like, oh, it's just not selling. So that went on for about a year until we were finally like, you know what? We want the rights back. Let's work this out. And then they were like, well, you got to pay us this much money. And it's funny because they were like, I want to say it was about $2,500 for us to get out of our contract. And they said it was because of the artwork. And the artwork, literally, I went on this stock website, and I could have downloaded all the artwork and put together that same cover for about $70.
Oh, jeez.
But they wanted to charge us $2,500. So, regardless, we found a way to pay them, get the movie back. And it wasn't until we signed with Wild Eye for the film to where it was like, it's been out on all these platforms as Betsy before. To where some of the platforms, they're not going to allow it. So they asked me some ideas that I might have for it. And that was the closest one that felt like it could still be like true to what's going on in the movie. And yeah, we went with that. And that was probably about a year and a half ago that we came up with that title.
Nice. So, without giving too much away, can you give the viewers sort of an idea of what the movie's about?
The film's about a young woman who gets attacked in the city, and basically she becomes traumatized to where she has to move out of the city and kind of like back home. And she ends up living with one of her friends who gives her a job and like is trying to help her get on her feet. But through this, she slowly starts to realize, as well as the audience does, that she was actually attacked by a werewolf, and things begin happening, and basically the animal inside starts clawing its way out.
Nice. Now, the next question I had, I don't even need to look. I keep looking at my list, which is over another document, but I remember this one. I don't even need to look. When I did my review, I mentioned, and I never looked up numbers, but I'm pretty sure I'm accurate, that it seems like there are a lot more vampire movies than there are werewolf movies. And I thought maybe it's because the makeup effects and special effects are so much more difficult to pull off. What do you think the reason behind that would be? Do you have a theory or?
I mean, my hesitation with doing a werewolf film ever was just the transformation. Like, everybody who's done a werewolf film has done a transformation, and they try to make it different than the previous transformations that they've seen. So I can say, like, for me, I knew I wasn't going to be able to pull off, like, flesh tearing away from the body. I mean, we had $2,500 to make this movie.
Wow.
So I really sat down and I thought about it, and I was like, I want to see like this. I wanted this to feel more emotional than like, oh my God, what is that? So it's kind of from the point of view of the animal inside, like trying to claw its way out. And that was the only way that I was like, man, with the budget that I barely have, that's probably the most realistic and feasible way for me to go.
Well, I think it was very effective. Now, next question, and without me getting into too much to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it, it seemed to me that there was one point in the movie where there's almost a setup for a sequel. Was that intentional? And are you planning to ever do the sequel?
I kind of some of my most of my films I try to leave open for a sequel because I generally never finish them to the point that I'm like 110% happy with them, to where it's like with it being a werewolf film, man, if I had the opportunity and the funding, I would love to be able to do a lot more with those characters. Whether it's a sequel, whether it's like a reboot and extending it or something, there's a lot that can be done still, I feel, with that storyline.
Right. And now this isn't one I had on my questions, but I've been curious since I saw it. To me, one of the things that was most effective about that movie was the dialogue. Like a lot of the dialogue, like the friends sitting and chatting, it just seemed so real and so genuine, and like you really knew these guys. It felt like you would just want to go down to the bar and sit down and have a beer with them. How did you come across? About getting that dialogue so natural? Is that just something you have a gift for, or did they? Was there some ad libbing or?
It definitely was not, as much as I would love to take credit. Um, that wasn't a me thing. I
Oh, okay.
I generally write dialogue to be pretty basic. Like I'm gonna here's A, B, and C, and I will tell the cast member, like, listen, I don't care how you say it, as long as you get these points across, we're good. Put it in your own words. I want it to feel real. I want it to flow. I don't want it to look like you're staring at somebody, but your eyes are dead because you're remembering your lines in your head. So I literally told them, like, do it how, say whatever you want within reason. I mean, don't go like overboard, but like, just get this point across. So that's how I try to work with. Oh, wow, I can't think of a film that I've ever been like, no, you have to say these words. I'm pretty easy going with as far as lines and everything, because I know I couldn't memorize lines, so I feel a little weird being like, what, you don't know your lines?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Well, it wound up working so well. I think, like I said, that was. I remember when I watched it. I remember sitting and just laughing at some of the little things they said, and it seemed so natural. That was great. um, let's see here. Um, Now, look, watching your social media, it seems like you're constantly going from one project to another. Um, how do you manage to find all the time to do that? I mean, and I know doing indie movies, it's even harder than a lot of times than it would be, doing the big productions in some ways, because you've got a lot more. You got a lot more on your back, as far as the marketing and stuff like that.
yeah. I don't know. Like I've been asked so many times that, like, people would be like, do you ever take a break? And it's like, anytime I think about taking a break, my mind just wanders right back to, like, well, what if I wonder if I can make one of those movies? Like, I'll be driving in the car and that's where I'm at. I'm in like production mode the whole time. Like, man, I really wonder if we rent that one lens, if the quality would jump like a level. Like, it doesn't shut off. Then I live with my business partner, and he's a filmmaker, obviously. So it's like we talk film like every day. That and I wanted to. It's like I've been a full time filmmaker for about 3 years now. So it's like I have to eat, sleep, live all these movies because I have to push them. Not only for obviously money, but like, I wanna get I wanna keep going upward versus just staying neutral.
Right.
So
Right. And you have the only way you can do that is keep pushing it so that you get a bigger audience each time.
yeah,
That's how anything like that works. So yeah. So it sounds like, you found the right thing to be doing, because if it's on your mind all the time, it sounds like you're in the right place.
yeah.
Um, do you have any advice for aspiring filmmakers?
It's really if you're I feel there's two. I mean, there's several types of filmmakers, but if you're coming from never making a film before, don't necessarily be worried about what kind of camera you're using. Um, as long as the story is good and the audio is good, people will be much more forgiving about the video quality. Um, that would be number one because I see that there's some filmmakers starting out with their first film trying to use like a $30,000 camera, and it's like you do you, but me personally, I don't think that's a very smart thing to do because how are you going to go up from that? It's like if you start at the top with the best of this and the best of that, you could potentially be setting yourself up for failure. So definitely be more worried about the story and the audio. I can watch, there are so many movies on Tubi that I go into watching it. I'm like, awesome. This looks awesome. And it'll look awesome. The story can be cheesy, it can be great. But once the audio sounds like the microphone's like 10 foot away from the person and all you hear is room, you're going to lose your audience. So, story, audio, video. That's what I do.
That sounds like good advice. And I know personally, I see a lot of really, low budget indie movies, and audio is a big problem with a lot of them. I mean, there have been some where it's like you literally can't hear the dialogue, and if you can't hear the dialogue, then you're not going to get much out of the movie. You're going to get lost.
Yep. And they now make wireless lav mics.
There you go.
Literally, you can buy them and hook them up to your phone to record audio for $40 a microphone. So in this day and age, with all the technology that's available, there's no excuses to have bad audio anymore.
Yeah, and on the other hand, I've seen indie movies that were done literally on iPhones, and you can hear them fine. They look good. I mean, yeah, you're right. There's so much very ground floor equipment that people can be using that there really isn't any excuse for it.
Right.
So now what have you been working on since then, and what do you got going now?
Since Animal Inside, there was Don't Fuck in the Woods 2, and then Stranded, which was it's more of a thriller involving Bigfoot.
Oh, nice.
And I'm at the moment working with Cheyenne Gordon, which we worked on. We co-wrote Stranded and Don't Fuck in the Woods 2 together. We're working on a script called They Come at Night, which is a story based off of the Hopkinsville Goblins. So I'm staying in creature features for a while because I personally don't feel that enough people are doing them. Like I guess for me, I grew up in an era to where it was like ghoulies, gremlins, critters. I mean, there were so many monster movies to where there aren't really now. Like it feels like the filmmaker who makes creature features are an endangered species.
Yeah, there's lots of slashers out there,
There, there are.
and lots of demonic ghost type movies like The Conjuring and stuff. But you're right, there aren't a lot of monster movies. You just don't see that many. Maybe part of it is it's hard to pull off if you don't get your makeup done right to be convincing or something. But even so, I mean, I've seen some monster movies that obviously the monster doesn't look good, but the story pulls it together enough that it doesn't matter because your mind will fill it in, and that's what it's about anyway. It's about what it does inside here,
right?
Which is why every movie is going to come across differently to every person. So now, do you have? And now I know you're a musician, so I wasn't sure if you were going to get this question because I haven't asked it of a filmmaker before, but because you're a musician as well, I'm sure you're going to get this. In your career, have you had any moments that you would consider a Spinal Tap moment?
Yes. I would say I was at a horror convention, and I got to smoke a cigarette outside and talk to a very tiny bit with John Carpenter. So that was, yeah.
Oh, that would be a big deal for me. I'm a Carpenter fanatic, so
I've got a couple different weird stories, but yeah.
How about another one?
I'd have to say that would be the highest. I don't necessarily recognize people's faces at first, and especially going through a horror convention, like it gets so crowded, and like, man, I'm thinking which one that I can actually say and not in trouble by anyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really, can I? Yeah, I don't think I can.
Okay. That's fine.
Embarrassing for those people.
Oh, I understand. Now, that sort of brings me to the end of the questions I've had, but I always like to leave it open. Anything you would like to talk about that we haven't touched on?
I'm going to do something that I'm hoping not many people have ever done. What got you into doing this?
What's that? What got me into doing this?
Yeah.
Well, okay. I started, I've been a horror fan since I was a kid. I'm older than you. So for me, it started with Dark Shadows when I was a little kid.
Okay.
And I would rush home to see Barnabas Collins. And then Kolchak the Night Stalker came on TV. And I would see all the Universal monsters on TV. And so I got into the horror stuff early. And then I started writing. I did, like, when I was a kid, I did comic books and that I would write and draw. And I sort of gave it up for a while. And then when I started doing Music Street Journal years later, because I decided I wanted to write about music, because I'd always played music for years, and I got the bug to write again. And eventually I started doing some fiction writing, and that wound up I started my little publishing imprint. And I was doing that for a while, and I thought, I'd like to start doing some videos. And so that was when I got the idea to do Spooky Ventures. And it was going to be basically based around the YouTube channel and doing videos. And it was sort of, it was just like, oh, what am I going to do to fill this content up? And eventually I sort of formulated some ideas of what I was going to do. And the funny thing was, when I did these videos originally, what I would do, like, I would have sent you questions in text format. You would have recorded your answers, and then I would have just recorded the audio of me asking the questions and assembled it all together. But then, after COVID happened and everybody got used to doing video conferencing, it suddenly became really easy to do this kind of thing. I thought, well, let's just start doing the live videos, and, people will appreciate that more, I think. And it's more natural, than just having canned questions and answers.
True.
So yeah, I mean that's sort of it in a nutshell for me.
Okay.
Yeah. And you know it's funny because actually that's actually more natural for me is answering questions
Yeah.
because I or no asking questions I mean is more natural for me because I've been doing interviewing for a Music Street Journal and then doing Spooky Ventures, so I'm not really all that used to doing answering the questions myself. It's just sort of something I've been getting used to lately. But
Well, I think you did great.
well, thanks. So anything else you want to chat about?
Um, See, I'm really bad at asking questions, but I can answer anything in the world.
What I was to say is I the way I am as a person too is I tend to be if I like someone's work and I like the person, I'm very loyal to them as far as getting them opportunities for promotion. So as far as I'm concerned, you're always welcome to come back. We can do
Okay.
this again every time you get something new out, or if you got something you want to promote, we can always do that.
Okay.
I'm always glad to have you back. That would be fun. But if there's nothing else you want to chat about, we can call it quits for today.
Okay.
All right. Well, that sounds good. And like I told you, I'm going to be doing a review soon of Don't Fuck in the Woods 2, so that should be fun. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to. And I get the impression that's sort of a takeoff on the slasher movies. But then again, you said that it's a creature feature. They're all creature features that you do, so it's not exactly a slasher film. Good.
No, those movies are. It's so weird because okay, so Animal Inside, I made that literally. We wrapped in October of 2016 with, or we released Don't Fuck in the Woods to October 2016, and by February I was starting to shoot Animal Inside because I wanted so quickly. I wasn't happy with the way Don't Fuck in the Woods turned out at that point, to where I didn't want that to be what I could potentially be known for. I wanted to get something else out there quick that had a better story.
Nice.
But that didn't necessarily work out in the end.
No, via distribution issues and things like that.
Yep.
And I, again, I think Animal Inside has a great story. I think, that's the other thing. The characters were also believable, and you could just imagine, sitting down, like I said, sitting down and chatting with any of them. So
And
well done.
it's one of those things too, to where like, Don't Fuck in the Woods and Animal Inside, two completely different movies, to where like Animal Inside, the reason why it had such a small budget was because like the way I write, I don't give people a lot to go off of. When it comes to actors, they're getting the basics of that scene setup, and they're getting some lines to go off of. To where like the script for that was only 30 pages, and that detoured a lot of people because everybody believes that one page is a minute of screen time.
Right.
Well, those people must not edit movies because that's not always the case. So I don't know if I made a point on that or not.
No, it's fine. But so yeah, you leave a lot of room for the actors to come up with this stuff. Which, I bet you there are some actors who love that, and I bet you there's some other actors who would absolutely hate it because I bet there are other actors who want all the lines there for themselves.
Right. And I do work with some actors that are like that, to where, I mean, that's fine. But for me, I will put them where I think they should be. Like when I audition somebody and I see that they're looking at somebody, but they're like just looking, like they're not reacting to what that person's saying, at that point, then it's like, okay, I think you can be the lead's best friend, but I'm not 100% sure about the lead.
Right.
So, which happens. Like, I don't know. I'm just a guy trying to make movies to where I got to go with what my gut says. And sometimes that's what it says.
Well, and it's, I mean, you got to be true to yourself anyway. You know, that's what it comes down to. And you got, you know what, you're the one with the vision. You've got to create what fits that vision.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's sort of the way with any art, I think. You know, and I say you were a musician, you're a musician as well, so you know that side of it. And it's just, I think I think there's a sense of genuineness that comes from when you do something that way, and I think things can feel really contrived if you don't.
Yeah.
You know, and I think audiences can get that. I don't know.
Oh, they can.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, that's, I guess that's what I read somebody who was talking about a writer, and he was saying, you know, if I write a piece of dialogue and it feels written, I know I have to redo it. And so that's sort of the same thing. It feels contrived at that point, you know.
Right.
Yeah. So I think your approach works really well from what I've seen. So,
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you for doing this interview. This was a lot of fun. And like I said, anytime you have another project out, just let me know. We'll do something else.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Take it easy.
You too. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Spooky Ventures is the home for spooky content and spooky merchandise on the web. Check it out today at spookyventures.com. And remember, always keep it spooky.